always makes it fun. I am Tom, so guess what? Yeah, this is your Tom Cruise that you are taking right now. You saw that one coming. We're going to be on 3 different lakes. This one is Lake Osceola. It's named after the famous Seminole Indian leader. And they do claim that, you know, long before Winter Park was here, Osceola camped right along the shores of these lakes and loved it here. Well, anyway, hang on your hats. We're taking off. Here we go. There we go. So anyway, well, once again, thank you all so much for coming. My friend in the back coming back and bringing your buddies. I don't know, so many of you haven't done this. I'm assuming some of you might be new to Winter Park, and whether you are or not, I mean, it's just such a neat little town. There's a ton to do here. The best thing is taking the boat tour, so brilliant decision there. But we do have, amongst other things, we have 3 very unique museums, especially for a town this size. And by far the most famous one is up on North Park Avenue. It's called the Morse Museum. It's the largest comprehensive collection of Tiffany glass in the world, along with other great arts. Strong suggestion there. And the other 2 are on the water, and we're right next to one. So if you do look, just look over here to the right, you're going to see a lot of sculptings. It's a sculptor's museum. It's called the Albin Pelagic Museum. 200 of his works are here. He was world-renowned as a sculptor. Retired to Winter Park in 1950 and lived in that yellow house with his wife. And when he passed away, she left the house and gardens as a shrine in the museum to him. And, you know, great museum, but it's also a pretty place. They do hold a lot of events on that wall. In my opinion, most important one they ever had was my daughter's wedding. Well, thank you. Still paying for it. No, I'm not paying for that. Matter of fact, no. So the house to the left of it is on the museum's property. You can see a couple sculptures. It's kind of a unique story. My daughter they just celebrated their 10th anniversary, and that wasn't there when she got married. It was the next year, even though it was built in 1885. So it used to be on the other side of this lake. It's one, it's called the Capon House, and one of Winter Park's oldest. But anyway, the guys that bought it when it was all across the lake on Interlock and didn't want it, and a lot of the locals didn't want a historic home torn down, so they raised the money to move it here because they gave them the land. And here's what makes it different, is they couldn't use Interlock and to move it. There are too many trees on that road. They cut that house in half with chainsaws, built a barge, and floated it over here in 2 pieces, and then spent 2 years putting it back together. So, you know, could have built several homes for what they spent, but it gets used a lot. They actually have some offices on the 2nd floor, but a lot of receptions after the weddings are held in that house. And matter of fact, I've probably taken 75 married couples as they leave the wedding by boat. They don't do it all the time, but probably take a bunch right off that dock. But anyway, mentioned we're going to be on 3 lakes, so we do use canals to go from one to the other. These lakes are natural, most Florida lakes are, but the canals that join them were originally just little streams. And in the 1870s, before Winter Park was here, they started to cut down the pine trees around the lakes, and the lumberjacks that cut them down hand dug the canals to float the trees to a sawmill that was on the next lake. So anyway, they've been canals 150 years. And although this is the Fern Canal, it has a lot of bamboo, different sizes of it. We just kind of pass some of the bigger bamboo. You see smaller stuff here. And we're going to see a lot of the stuff hanging from the trees. It's called Spanish moss, and it is neither Spanish nor moss. It's an air plant. Technically, it's an epiphyte, and they used it for a lot of things in the early 1900s. They stuffed mattresses with it, found out pretty quickly it's full of bugs. So that's where the expression, don't let the bed bugs bite, first started. You see this live oak, all these live oaks in here, you're going to see a fern on their branches that today is kind of a little bit green, but also turning brown. By the end of the day, if it doesn't rain, it would be totally brown, look kind of dead. So when it doesn't rain for about 3 days, it turns brown. So as soon as it rains, it turns bright green and bushy. That's why it's called resurrection fern. It goes back to life. And this would be where I have you all stand up and introduce yourself. No, don't stand up here. Watch your heads. I'm sure some of you, if not all of you, are wondering why we don't have tops on our boats. We would love them, especially this time of year, but just can't have them, you know, because of the bushes and trees we go under. And this would be where the gators jump in. No, I do get asked about gators occasionally. We used to, that's Florida, we used to have a bunch of them in these lakes. I've lived on this one 50 years, but for 30 years, or about 30 years, yeah. A lot of the folks that live on the lakes asked the city to remove them and relocate them, which they've done to the point that today it's so rare to see a gator on this chain. And when they creep in, they pull them out. Most of the ones they did take out, they put in Lake Jessup, which this water runs to 12 miles from here. And today Jessup has more gators per square foot than any place in the United States because everybody puts their gators there. Even Disney does that. We are going to see one gator. It just happens to be a statue right here on the left, along with Jeremiah. This guy used to be a friend of mine, Jeremiah the bullfrog right there. And this is Lake Virginia. One of the first settlers here was from that state, named it after it. A little bigger lake than Osceola. There's 6 lakes on the chain that are connected by canals, but a lot of lakes join them by streams and the St. Johns River. We're actually in St. Johns Water Management right now, so all this water eventually goes through the Atlantic Ocean at Jacksonville by way to St. Johns, one of the 2 rivers flowing north. And actually 4 of Orlando's lakes that connect flow into, I was there yesterday with my grandson, flow through a little creek and meet gardens over here to Lake Virginia. So we do get some Orlando water, a little bit. Left goes to a smaller lake called Lake Mizell, which the Mizell's actually named after themselves because they were the only people here when they're our first settlers that weren't Native Americans. Got here in 1858 and established a little community over there. It's called Lakeview, really small, but they sold that property 30 years later to the guys that started Winter Park, so it became part of this town. And then my house would be just to the right of the canal. No, it's not mine. I wouldn't be driving this boat. Yeah, I know. This one does have a little history, though. At least the original building, which is the middle, that part's 100 years old. Right left side are 7-year-old additions. But the original building started off as a businessman's club, which only lasted 2 years. So one of Rollins' professors, a guy named Dr. Martin, bought the building. He made it his house, but he eventually gave it to Rollins. And they used it as their music conservatory, called it Martin Hall. That's what it was when I moved here. Rollins sold it in 1976. They made it back into a house, and that's what it's been ever since. So that house and the next 3 that we pass, all 4 of these sit on Lake Mizell and Lake Virginia. So these guys get a sunrise over there on Mizell, and yep, sunset here on Virginia.
Perfect, okay.
Y'all are doing good about keeping that sun behind a cloud. It's so much nicer. I'm sure you can imagine. Land, and especially lakefront, is just so pricey here. The reason they haven't developed all this is it's a preserve. It's called the Genius Preserve. It's about 50 acres, sits on 3 different lakes, which unfortunately for y'all is not open to the public, and actually nobody lives in the house on it, but the folks that used to are the ones that gave land and home for it. They actually have 220 acres here. They did develop 170 of it. It's a neighborhood called Winsong, and those homes in front of us, and the ones we just passed are part of the neighborhood. But anyway, when they had all the land and lived here, even though it's not open today, they just love Winter Park, and I think Winter Park loved them, but they let the public on this little dirt road going through here for years called Genius Drive, and it's basically what you thought of when you thought of Winter Park for a long time. And it was also full of peacocks, and there's still some, not as many, but that's why the peacock is the symbol of Winter Park, because the ones that live over here. And it was the same family that owned the land for 110 years, 3 different generations. Bought it for right at $2 an acre, and the part they sold, like those lots over there, went for about $2 million an acre. So they did okay on that. And Rollins campus, would be to our right. I'm going to kind of, you see the neck sticking up right there? It looks like a snake. That is a bird, but that's why they call them snake birds, because the neck looks like a snake. They're technically anhingas. Most of their time actually spent underwater, and after a while they get waterlogged. So we'll probably see some drying their feathers, and if we do, I'll work those out. Rollins campus starts on that road right in front of us, goes almost back to where we came into Lake Virginia. They have about 80 acres in this lake. The school was started in 1885. Rollins is the first private college in Florida. And, you know, today a lot of folks think it's the best liberal arts school in the South. And when they started, there were 60 students, and it cost $100 a year to go to Rollins, which has changed a little bit. I know with room and board, right now you're looking at 70 grand a year to go. And not a particularly large student body, right in the neighborhood of 2,000 undergrads. But they also have an MBA program, they have a night school, they've got graduate courses, and you put all that together, it's still only about 10 students for every professor here. So, you know, great education. Very pretty campus. You can see part of it here, and you know, probably a little subjective, but the Princeton Review did rank Rollins the prettiest campus in the U.S. in 2015, and they still rank it, you know, up in the top 10. So to me, just, I know it's a little hot right now, but maybe this evening, but just probably taking a walk through Rollins is one of the better things to do in Winter Park, and the shoreline is really popular. You see they got a walkway, but actually they're working on it a little bit, but even if you did that, you want to walk through the center to catch the architecture and some of the buildings there. And these trees that line the shore over here are the main tree all the way around these lakes, because they grow in and around water because the roots you see sticking up. They're called bald cypress. They're without foliage or bulb for 6 weeks a year, and they're our oldest type of tree. So we have several in town. I'll show you something that are 1,000 years old. I mentioned two museums. The third here in Winter Park is owned by Rollins. It's the building behind the gazebo right there on the point, called the Rollins Fine Arts Museum. They're going to actually it was the Cornell until about 8 months ago. They're going to build a new building for it next year. They're going through a little bit of a rebranding. But it does sit in the Cornell building. And there are actually a lot of buildings named after the Cornells and the Alphon family. Those have given the most money. And that big building right there is the Alphon Gym, but to the right of it, you can see kind of the top two floors of the Alphon Inn across the street. Both gifts from the Alphons to Rollins. The Inn, since we're pretty close to both to where a hotel called the Langford was for 50 years. The Alphon's been here 8, but it's already considered to be one of Florida's best hotels. All the money it makes goes to scholarships for Rollins students. It has they just had 80 rooms, but it has $10 million worth of artwork. So it is kind of like another museum here, and you know, don't have to stay there to stop in. So a little history. The train that goes right through the middle of this town came through in 1880. And 1889, a couple local guys thought there should really be a commuter train too, just to go down to Orlando, because it was a big city and there weren't any cars and everybody was riding their horses back and forth. So they built this little teeny narrow gauge railroad, and the station was right there where the beach sits. It was called the Winter Park Orlando Railroad, and nobody ever called it that. It was so small they nicknamed it the Dinky Line, and that's why that beach is a park called Dinky Dock, named after the station. It used to sit right there. And the train ran for 78 years. Jumped the tracks a lot. You had to jump off and help the engineer pick it up, put it back on. Actually, a lot of fun stuff written about that. You can look some of that up. Building to the right of it, that was an apartment complex Rollins bought and made into a dorm 17 years ago, and the house to the right of that is the president's house for Rollins. Actually, both he and his wife squeeze in that one. It's 9,000 square feet, but they're wonderful, and they actually use it for, you know, entertaining people, but the school uses it for events, and so it's well used, and it's the last building on the water that is Rollins. So everything to the right of that is private homes and condos. Here's just a little quick early Winter Park history. I just mentioned how the train that goes through town, not the Dinky line, came through in 1880. The land to start Winter Park was actually built the next year, largely because of the train. A couple of New Englanders just loved these lakes, and they're right by the railroad tracks. They felt like wealthy Northerners would too, and they want to build their winter homes here. It looked like a park. They called it Winter Park. The train gave everybody a way to get here. So they developed 600 acres on the shores of these lakes. Rollins College started 4 years later. The year after Rollins started, the largest hotel in the state at the time was built where the Plagic Museum is today. It was called the Seminole Hotel. So that made Winter Park actually a really famous resort town. It was open 5 months every winter, but even U.S. presidents were coming down and staying. It burned down. It burned down in 1902. They were underinsured, didn't rebuild, but most people definitely feel like the Seminole Hotel, Rollins College, and the train would be the big factors that made Winter Park. There were, there's a hotel that's still in town that just celebrated 100 years on Park Avenue, more of a little bed breakfast thing called Park Plaza. But there were also 2 other hotels on these lakes that were really famous resort winter hotels. So when we get where they were, I'll mention this. Watch it. Last year, it was the highest I've ever seen. So if you didn't hear the question, was ever high enough where we can't get through? Not traditionally, unless we have a hurricane. But Ian was the highest I think the lakes have ever been. The St. John's was the highest it's ever been in recorded history, and we flowed to it. But so this year, after Nicole and Ian, they closed the lakes, which they never did, but they did this year. 2 of my favorite trees on this trip are right here on the left, 300-year-old live oak, and it goes across the canal to the oldest pine tree in the park on the right, 150-year-old pine. Yeah, traditionally, they don't close them down, but they really had to this year. They were probably, if you look, when you go back to the boat tour, look at the stains on our office walls. That's how high the water was. We had 1.5 foot of water. So it was probably 3.5 feet higher than this. Now, I talked about cypress trees living in water because of their roots. These are cypress trees right here. The part that stick up are called cypress knees. And the knees give oxygen to the cypress roots. They're below the water, which is why they live in water. So that Anhinga just blew into dry feathers. I told you we were going to do that. So I'm going to for these lakes, the dark brown house to our right behind the cypress is a little more modest than some of these, but that was originally a retreat for the Walgreens drugstores. Of course, the irony is, as soon as they built it, CVS built a much bigger house next door. No, they didn't. But thank you, because sometimes I get nothing, so much. Yeah, that would be your fake news, but the Walgreens, I made that part up. But anyway, the Walgreens part's true. The house it belongs to right behind it is one of the few original homes on these lakes. It's a Georgian Revival style home built 128 years ago. And the gentleman that had that built was from Cortland, New York. Wanted to live here in the winter. I was talking about this being a winter community. His wife didn't want to live in the state. Florida was kind of a wilderness, so to get her down here, he built a replica up there in Cortland. And they went on with 2 homes like that. And they liked it here. It's a small town, hung out with each other. And that's a big house that has a ballroom. So a lot of the social events in Winter Park back then were held right there. So the Seminole Hotel, which I told you burned down in 1902, was right behind us, kind of where the Alpha, it's not the Alpha, but where the Pelagic is. But 10 years, I told you there are a couple other hotels in these lakes. 10 years after the Seminole burned down, a different group of folks built a hotel over here to the left, and that little gazebo boathouse is the only thing left. So that's 100 years old. They spent a lot of time on the name of the hotel that was over here. They called this one the New Seminole Hotel, so not that original. But anyway, they never built on this lot until 3 years ago, but the architect designed it with a wood roof, the house, so they would match their historic boathouse. And, just a good town for homes in general, and not just the quality, certainly how diverse it is, and architecturally at least. And the main architect in Winter Park, is still really celebrated a lot. His work was done from the 30s through 50s. His name was James Gamble Rogers. There are about 100 homes of his left, and this Bermuda style is one of his last. So he designed that so every room would look on the lake, and he wanted to make it look a little bit like Bermuda, so he put it in white sand beach too. Speaking of homes here in Winter Park, probably a little obvious, but to build something new, you got to buy something and tear it down. The lakes are built out, at least, especially on the lakes. But anyway, that new construction kind of in front of us to the right has gotten a lot of press. The house that was there was a pretty big historic home here in town, but it just needed way too much work to save, which these guys didn't want to do. They wanted a lot, and they need a big lot. This is why it's getting pressed. They did pay, by the way, $4.5 million for the old house just to tear it down. But anyway, as I was saying, it's getting tons of press. When that is finished, it's going to be Winter Park's and one of Florida's largest homes. So yeah, it'll be 41,000 square feet when they finish that one. And yeah, I know 42 would have been 3 might have been too big. All these homes do sit on the road we're about to go under, which is called Palmer Avenue. After we go under that, Alabama Drive will be on our right, which we kind of go along on the next leg and run right along the shore. So the whole town's, to me, good for driving around, but Alabama's one of the favorite drives. So if you're looking to drive around, you might want to think about that. This canal is called the Venetian Canal. It's by far the longest. It kind of looks like the lumberjacks that dug this had a few cocktails before they did it. Doesn't go straight at all. And the lawn to the right of it has that statue which faces north. We call that southern exposure here on Lake Osceola. Where lilies bloom during the hot months, but only about 4 or 5 hours a day. So 2 hours ago you wouldn't have seen them, and actually an hour and a half ago you would, because they're still in their bud, which opens up to this flower and closes in the afternoon. This is a James Gamble Rogers home, which they just left basically the exterior walls and the roof, but they're adding a lot to it, but they're doing a pretty good job actually. We've got snow bananas in some of these banana trees. This one has a couple bunches there. There we go. These are still a little sparse, but crepe myrtles are blooming around town. This one's just getting going. The woman who lives in the house to our right, such a good little gardener, is always out here, and she puts these orchids up every summer too. Bunch of heads. Yeah. So Alabama Drive, we'll see it better in a minute, but it's right up here on the right. And on the next lake on Alabama, there's a building that was the other famous winter hotel here on the lakes. It was called appropriately the Alabama Hotel, which was built 103 years ago, and it was very popular. People like Sinclair Lewis and Margaret Mitchell and H.G. Wells were pretty frequent customers. It ran its course, and instead of tearing it down, they made it into condos, which still looks like the old hotel, but today it has been for 40 years the Alabama condos. Someone will point that out. And again, if y'all have questions, don't be shy about shopping. You know, not on this trip, surprisingly. I have a lot of shade, we have programs and stuff. I got a lot at my house, but not, they do spray a little bit back here. The water does run a little, so it's not standing so much. So I know I've done this trip over 16,000 times. I've never been bitten. But I will when I get home. I thought I saw a boat up here. I hope not. We'll find out. Yeah, got fish. I think he's not supposed to be, but I'll pass him right there. Oh, there he goes.
Big ass right there.
I know. I was just thinking, nothing to do with full dust. No. Man, it's all about the bass. I did catch a bass yesterday off my dock. Fishing's pretty good here, and that's what they fish for, primarily. It's largemouth bass. But nobody eats. Everybody throws them right back. Yeah, really. Nobody keeps these. Yeah, well, you know, you could. I mean, there might be a few people that do, but no. It's just a sport fish. It's not the best eating fish in the world. And, you know, people just want to keep the fishing good, you know. And they'll back up for it. And this is Lake Maitland, which is the largest lake on the chain. About 450 acres. There's a little island right in the middle, straight ahead of us, called Dog Island, which is the favorite place to boat here. Building to our right, this is Rollins College's crew boat house. The crew team uses this lake instead of Virginia because it's twice as big and just, you know, much better for crew.
Got four more to go. Perfect, thank you, sir. And as soon as they go through, guys, we're gonna go.
on a Friday. We have the police department. Got a lot of parks in Winter Park. Appropriately, this one to our right is really one of the favorites. It's called Craft Azalea Garden. Some of the cypress trees are 1,000 years old in there. But also in the park right here, we have that little 6-column concrete structure. It's called an exedra, which in Greek means 6-column concrete structure, basically. And hey guys, used primarily for taking pictures, which you all might think about. But also a lot of small weddings are held there. So wake surfing is pretty much what people do these days. They don't never see skiing, very little wakeboarding, but that's what these guys do here. A lot of people are also using oil boards, which takes you above the water and has less drag, so that's even more popular. Looks like a little kid doing that. It's impressive. Yeah, I think, when you get back on the ski, it's a little bit. But, yeah, they usually let go of the rope as they get a little better, just right away. So this is all Alabama Drive also. It takes your Craft Azalea and turns over here. But in the very corner behind the boats is the old Alabama Hotel that I mentioned, now condos. And then the homes to the left of it are one that runs into Alabama called Via Tuscany. Great drive. And this vendor training outlaw is just really like that. And finally got invited to a party there a couple of weeks ago. Got to see the inside, was better than the out. And it is called Villa Toscana. It's built 1927 and really has that Tuscany look to it. And you missed your chance on it because it sold last year, but you can still get the one to the left that went on the market 2 weeks ago. So there you go. Yeah, on that I grabbed that thing quick. But that is the oldest house back here. It is. How much? It's. They're asking $16 million, but they won't get it. But anyway, that one is 108 years old. And back then, this whole cove was their orange grove. At the time, the largest one on the lakes. 2 doors to the left of it, the house with the columns, architecturally looks pretty old. And that one is 8 years old. So, it's just such a good blend of old and new here. That one has a guest house on the left, full house, full putting green on the right, and play tennis court sitting on the shore. That's what's fenced in. And the newest house in the cove is almost all glass, a little bit to our right, which is a year old. And, there's been a lot of glass. They didn't want to boat house in the water because it would have blocked their view. It's the only one on these lakes. It's not. If you look to the right of the house, that's a boat garage. And it has a track that takes it over there. Well, you could. We would appreciate it. Talking about old and new homes here. This house to our right is a combination of old and new. The original house is the left side, which is modeled after a house in Venice. It's always been a famous home here. It used to be on postcards in Winter Park, and that's 100 years old. And the right side they put on just 10 years ago. It's an addition, but you see the house to the right of it looks the same. That's because it's where their next door neighbor's house used to be, which they bought and tore down to build their pool house 7 years ago. Yeah, pretty expensive pool house, but the original house on the left side of this was used by Tom Hanks 25 years ago to represent a scientist home in a movie. It was called From Earth to the Moon. canal to the right. Looks like it goes to a different lake, but it doesn't. That's also Lake Maitland on the other side. So what you see to the left of that canal is an island, but just separated by the water under the bridge. And up until the 20s, you couldn't build out here, it's too low. So they sandbagged the perimeter and backfilled it, made a 12-acre island. And today 11 homes sit on this. It's definitely some of Winter Park's more expensive property. It's called the Isle of Sicily. And that little cypress off its shore, those are Christmas ornaments. Looks a little like Charlie Brown's tree. One of our former drivers, Charlie West, and his family decorated that 27 years ago. Now, it's pretty famous because they never took any ornaments off, but they came out every Christmas season and replaced them until 7 years ago. There's an anchor right here in front of us. But anyway, we just love Charlie so much. But we lost him to cancer 7 years ago. So the last 7 Christmases, myself and a couple other drivers were able to decorate, which is kind of an excuse for cocktails and a boat ride at Christmas. We did put myself and the driver behind me put up 4 big ornaments on the backside that all have names on them, and they're all folks we lost to cancer. So Charlie, of course, won. But so now it's like a little memorial tree for us. Quite a few homes on the right side of the cove that are results of teardowns in the last 10 years. The newest one is almost well, has those big glass, those big windows with the palms. So that's 7 months old. And the house to the left of it, which is modern, has actually been here for 30 years. And it was a little, got some attention when it was built because at the time it was the largest house on the chain of lakes and it had a basketball court on the inside. It was one of the Magic players originally. And so that was Horace Grant's house. And the guy that bought it from the first guy 20 years ago was short, entertained a lot. So he made the basketball court a ballroom for the parties, but also lowered all the stuff that Horace designed for himself. And the newest owners, they spent a couple years gutting the interior, and in the last year and a half have added stuff to the outside down. The big addition was everything on that roof, because the roof was flat. And the 2 spiral staircases to get up there, because they put a rooftop bar and lounge up there. And the White House to the left of it, such a classic. It was built by James Stanley Rogers, the architect I mentioned, built right in the middle of the Depression. Well, obviously not the Depression. Most famous owner for the Packers, the Packers cars. And since you brought it up, it's just he delayed me by a couple minutes. For those of you who don't know this, Fred Rogers, of course Mr. Rogers, is Rollins College's favorite graduate. So Fred was asking about this, so I'm definitely going to show you the house his parents had while he was at Rollins. But since you brought it up, and we're talking about Rollins grads, they've actually had quite a few interesting graduates. Years ago, Anthony Perkins and Buddy Epson went there. Buddy Epson grew up in this area. But even recently, Paul McCartney's stepson and Tiger Woods actually graduated. When Paul's stepson was here, Paul was here all the time. People still think he owns property here. And people thought he was moving. But Anita Woods was valedictorian and gave the commencement address at Rollins. She was pretty small girl. But Fred is the guy that they love to talk about. Wow, those people left so far. I mean, we gave them 10 minutes to get through here. They must have gotten stuck in that boat because they did not go very far at all. We have, I saw this guy was leading. We're catching everybody. But, yeah, they're not supposed to be in the canal when we are either because we're the only licensed business on this chain. But I guess we'll figure this one out too. Y'all weren't planning on getting back today, were you? Yeah. Yeah, I know. Well, you know, he snuck in there. The guy tried to get him in. I think these are all pretty new. You can always tell new paddleboarders when they're all sitting down instead of standing up for the most part.
Yeah, I can't get by you guys there, but go up to the next boathouse, the next little slip, and I could probably get by you there.
What else is all? Hey,
Buddy, my friend on the left, I cannot get by you there. You're going to have to go to a boathouse, my friend. Both of you. Yeah, just pull in right there, guys, and we'll get by you. Yeah, go in there. You got it. Just go in there. Perfect.
Yeah, we'll see how this works. There's a boathouse right here. I wish they just pulled right there because it's wide open. Uh-oh, lost one. So obviously we got a little extra time here, so I'm going to tell you a couple things. One is I'll talk a little bit about Fred Rogers. I mentioned we're going to see his house, which is actually his parents' house. So Fred got a degree in music, got in 1951. Yeah, all right, buddy. He grew up outside Pittsburgh. He's from Latrobe, Pennsylvania. In his first year of college, he's a pretty bright guy. He went to Dartmouth for 1 year, which he really didn't like at all. So he transferred to Rollins, and when he did, he brought his piano with him, which he wanted to put in his dorm room, and Rollins wouldn't let him do it. So his parents bought the house I'm going to show you if we ever get over here, and put the piano inside there for him. So you're going to see the beautiful neighborhood he was talking about all those years. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. Yeah.
Guys, just watch out, honey. We got 4 boats, guys. We'll get by you.
Sorry, guys.
That's all right, Bob. We'll make it.
I thought we were getting here faster. We had other boats that were
I know. We got it. I think we got it. But we do have 4 boats, so
yeah,
just be ready.
not a problem. Morning, everybody.
Super nice guy. Hey, buddy. I know we did it. Well, they did it. They did pretty good for probably being pretty good. I will tell you, so I mentioned all this Fred Rogers stuff just to save some time, but they really do a lot to honor him. They have walking tours, but just talking about Fred basically. But last year definitely was the biggest honor. They had a statue of Fred made, which I know it took 2 years to make. They erected it last year, put it right next to the chapel, and it's actually Fred surrounded by children. The sculptor Paul Day kind of felt like that would be much better. So, but the truth is, the price tag also went up to $750,000. But Rollins is pretty happy with that. And if you're over there, I'd take a look at it. But you know, I mentioned it was kind of a house for his parents, which they kept after Fred left for a little while because Fred's sister went to Rollins too after he did. And Fred actually met his wife while he was at Rollins. She was a student with him, and one of his nephews, Dr. Cruse, are teaching music over there right now. Well, you got all that extra info now. I got stuck. Hang on your hats in just a second. is Fred Rogers' parents. And I talked about the statue was at the chapel, which I did point out earlier, but you can see a little bit of steeple above the outline and over the addition to the outline. In the trip, I was telling y'all about that house I got that floating across the outline. Oh, it's just like a dictator house. And I mentioned it used to sit on Interlock, and this is Interlock, and to our right, it was where the Great White Limit, the guest house, is today. Matter of fact, the guest house was part of the old Kingman's. They kept that part, and the Dodge and everybody camped down the hill. And Interlock, it is right in the middle of Winter Park. It's on the water. It's where a lot of our county companies built today. House on Interlock, goes with this boat house, which is obviously a boat house, and that, I built in the early 1880s. I've been to the Morse Museum or on Morse Boulevard. That was the Morse family building, still in the Morse Foundation, so we'll see part of that. Outfield Live, right across the street See a little bit of the Alpine End, which is on Interlock End. On the other end, to our right, would be our golf course, which is the second oldest in the state. And all the churches all sit on this, and this White Cross belongs to the Methodist Church right across the street. They hold their Easter sunrise service right there on the benches. And then in front of us, we made it a very historic place called the Winter Park Scenic Boat Tour. So, should look pretty familiar to you. And actually for Florida, pretty historic. They started the boat tour in 1938. So 85 years, they've done it every day except Christmas Day and bad weather. So we're considered to be the oldest continuously run tourist attraction in the whole state of Florida. Yay us. And I am not the original driver. I might look like it, but I'm not. But thank you guys. I know it's a hot day. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. A little overcast. And you guys were wonderful. So thanks for listening to me. And I'm glad we made it back. But definitely come back. We'd love to see you.